All right, welcome back to Mixtape Stories. We have returning guest, Nerd Rock Josh,
Hi.
and today we're going to talk about wrestling themes. Why they're great, why they're a part of the lore of wrestling, and just why they're just so fun to listen to.
There's so many good ones.
Yeah,
There's so many good ones, and it was really hard to come up with an actual cohesive thought of because there's so many ways you could go. Who's got the spookiest theme?
yeah,
Who's got the heaviest theme? Who's got just the best overall theme? And I was thinking on this one, let's pick an era before The Rock, because if you smell, that is such a great Pavlov's bell. But before that, there was a ton of other Pavlov's bells. So I want to pick. I've selected about 5 Pavlov's bells pre The Rock, before we could smell what he was cooking, and I hope everyone enjoys my selections and understands why I chose them.
yeah. This is our last episode was about the '80s. This is going to be more about kind of the '90s, early '90s.
Yeah.
Just so that way you can kind of put it into context. Like, can you just describe Pavlov's bell and the
The
concept of it?
Pavlov's bell is if you train an animal to come to a bell, or learn hey, food is going to be this whistle pitch, while come here is this whistle pitch. It's kind of training someone to just hear a noise and their immediate response is something. That's a Pavlov's bell. And so with wrestling themes, especially back in the day, you had, before, there was a time when there was no themes and it was just a ring announcer saying, making his way to the ring, and then it was just crowd noise of ah or boo, and it wasn't until I think the Freebirds or someone in that era of the late 70s started coming out with a boombox and music, and that kind of opened up the gates of hey, maybe people will think we're cool if we got a cool song. And it's like having a TV show theme song, and even then a good Pavlov's bell in theme song world, Saved by the Bell's bell ring. As soon as you hear that, that's Saved by the Bell's on. Reading Rainbow, just that one soft synth, oh, butterfly in the sky, waiting for it, there it is. You just that first instant hit of a song that exactly what you're gonna hear. And with wrestlers, their music is important because it really needs to tell who the character is and what the character is about. You just can't come out to whatever without it meaning something. And wrestling is such an advanced form of art that everything has to mean something, or else it's just hokey bullshit.
Yeah, it definitely threads that line. I was wondering if this kind of set the precedent for boxers and UFC fighters to
I
come out to
believe it
music.
did, because they didn't have entrance music until pay-per-view era. And if anything, they might have had a marching band, play them out. And the football, I know the Baltimore Colts, before they moved to Indianapolis, they had a marching band for the team, and then they're the ones who basically got the Ravens to become a thing in Baltimore, because they're still the only NFL team with a marching band. So being an athlete and entering the arena to a song really matters. And it doesn't just matter for being the athlete and being hyped up and stoked, but for the audience, being a part of that hype, it pumps us up too. And so the first song that I thought of, and say what you want about the man, he's not the best human, but he did give a lot of us some good memories. But Hulk Hogan's theme song, Real American, by Rick Derringer, that even when it doesn't have the I am a real, if it just starts with the guitars that bam, that as soon as you hear that bam bam, everyone, oh my god, Hulk Hogan, it's Hulkamania, and that's one of those that I also feel like that song could be like a national anthem replacement for the Star Spangled Banner. Like, really good contender, great chorus, hypes everyone up that hears it, especially if you're American.
Yeah, yeah. It's iconic. I mean, even yeah, it's one of those things that is just undeniable even with as much, I mean, even going beyond just recent news with Hogan. I mean, there's been a history of him doing
Yeah.
things that are like just the opposite of good.
Yeah.
Um
But he did bring a lot of good memories to a lot of kids' faces,
yeah.
and a lot of smiles. Like, yes, he did. He did bring joy at one point. He definitely brought joy, and a big part of that was the Hulkamania with Real American. And especially during the 80s when that song came out, like we had talked previously about like Rocky 4 and the impact that that movie has had on American culture. Real American is almost like the embodiment of that, and then thrown on like this blonde dude
Yeah.
that's like super tan.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
named Terry.
it's too, I mean, the way the song itself is set up, it is a very much like a rock anthem, and the guitars are prominent even though there's not like a lot of like riffage. It's just straight, like, for the most part, pretty much just chords, and it still is iconic in that sense that you hear that and you know exactly what's going on.
And it's got great transitions within the composition itself, like the pre-chorus and even just like everything about it is just a good rock song. And then the fact that it's like the only pro-America song that I'm like, yeah, like I could get behind that. I'm a real American, fight for the rights of every man. I am a real American, fight for your life. You know, like, fuck yeah, I'm in.
Yeah, and it's coming at the point in time, like you said, like Rocky IV, the Cold War is like at kind of at, I don't want to call it its end, but near its end.
And he wore like the inverse colors of the Soviet Union.
I never thought about that.
You know, he wore like yellow dominant with red versus the red dominant with the yellow.
Yeah.
You know, and it, I don't know if that was in like an intentional thought, but also yellow's a color of happiness. Like, so like I always associated Hulk Hogan wearing yellow with like, oh, happy people wear yellow. And so like it wasn't until like way later on that I was like, he's like all American, but he doesn't wear red, white, and blue, but he's wearing like the opposite colors of like communism with his, you know, yellow tights, yellow boots, and red knee pads, you know, and so like I remember my brother being like, he's wearing McDonald's clothes. And then It's Always Sunny is bringing up that his skin looks like a hot dog. You know, it's like, yeah, he's got ketchup and mustard going on. Like, he's American.
It's funny to look back on. I was definitely a big fan of wrestling in the 90s and kind of the early 2000s. I was definitely there for this era, like this early 90s era. Like Attitude Era is like the era that I remember the most. I think that's where that was scheduled watching every Monday. I just remember being like this in talking about how wrestling has evolved. He is a big part of that. I mean,
Oh, absolutely.
Taking it from being kind of just not underground, but kind of more circuit building and to this mainstream level. I mean, him along with Vince McMahon kind of took this to where it is now. I mean, they are the link between that.
And then when he went to the other company and became the ultimate bad guy, after being the ultimate good guy for so long, that and he wound up just keeping so much longevity with his career because of that.
Yeah.
Like, it was a really smart business move on his part, and it also evolved his character even further because when he finally came back and did the Mr. America stuff and like had his redemption arc with WWE, like it all made sense. Like the whole story finally like ended nicely.
Yeah.
And you know, the one thing that everyone remembers most out of all the things of Hulk Hogan, besides, you know, his gestures, is his damn theme song of Real American, because it's badass.
He was like a bass player growing up, and I think he might have been in like a band before he started wrestling professionally. So I think he does kind of have an ear for that, and that's ultimate. I mean, it's still like it's very dad rock.
And that was also the era when they were trying to break MTV and wrestling, like as like a rock and wrestling connection. And like Roddy Piper was like really big on that. Cyndi Lauper, Captain Lou, Albano, like everyone that was part of like the first three WrestleManias even, like that was like a huge shift in culture because that was like cable TV was like a brand new thing and becoming more available in regular households and not just like, oh, that's some bougie shit. and you know, with everything like becoming what it was, like that song really encompasses like a whole time capsule of an era while still retaining a Pavlov bell quality. Thinking of like other, you know, wrestlers of that era, you know, Macho Man came out to Pomp and Circumstance, but everyone already associates that with Graduation. And, you know, yeah, it works great for Macho Man, but that's also the Graduation song, you know, so like as much as I love Macho Man Randy Savage way more than Hulk Hogan had a better song. But it also wouldn't have worked for Macho Man. It wouldn't have worked for anyone else other than Hulk Hogan.
It's interesting to just look back and to see how much of the stuff was bless you, how much of the stuff was like intentional and how much thought went into all of this, especially with the songs. I mean, we'll get into this more later with the other songs you have, because that was fabricated in that way to kind of establish on either the character they were going for or like something that was already established by their character and they needed something to really symbolize that. With Hulk Hogan, I think that this whole era, I mean, he's definitely the biggest wrestler of that era. And how much of it do you think is just him as a personality versus he was chosen to like kind of take this leap forward?
I feel like it's definitely column A and column B. Like he definitely was given the ball to like take it home, and he did. And he did it for a whole decade, you know, getting people just on the wagon of Hulkamania. And then, you know, once everyone got tired of it, he reinvented himself and came back to the old.
It's interesting too, because did he choose Voodoo Child, or was it like a variation of the song Voodoo Child for his Hollywood Hulk Hogan era?
It was definitely a variation of it. As well as like using the real deal for pay-per-views and stuff, because I mean they had Ted Turner money at the time, and the licensing wasn't that ridiculous before '96. But yeah, like Voodoo Child, like it has that guitar riff, but man, when you got Hollywood Hulk Hogan and you don't like him because he's the bad guy, kind of ruins Jimi Hendrix for you. And you're like, man, I don't want to listen to Hendrix. Hollywood Hulk Hogan comes out to him. No.
It's really cool to see like that, because it is such a like dirty sound, and it's like it is very like, it's not even dark, but it feels dark. I mean, and I think that him using that was very strategic in being able to establish all of these things, because Derringer's I Am the Real American is so bright. It's so like it's so just cheery and very like, you know, anthem building, whereas this one's more like dirty, like you can like
and like when he would come out to Real American, he would come out walking tall and proud, while when he came out to Voodoo Child, he was slow, arrogant, cocky. He'd take 10 minutes to get to the ring. He'd take an hour if you'd let him. You know,
he's like he was creeping in almost. Like he was very methodic with it.
I mean, again, like on screen is completely different than what he is off screen. And on screen, I've got a lot of great memories of Hulk Hogan. Loving him and hating him.
Yeah. I think that he kind of we talked about this, but he transitioned to Hollywood Hulk Hogan because he wasn't used to, people were sick of like, you know, the All American, and I love it too. Is like, this was like the mid 90s. So at this point, you know, Gen X is really prominent and kind of like, man, this guy's fucking lame, you know? So I think he adapted to that, because I mean, he is somebody who needs that like that kind of reaction from a crowd, that he wants to make sure he's on the right side of, in terms of, he doesn't want to be the lame guy. He wants to be the cool guy.
Yeah. And so the next generation of wrestlers that came up, which I'm going to transition to my next track, um, because everyone was getting tired of Hogan and Hogan was on his way out because he was wanting to do movies and stuff. Uh, Vince McMahon had Bret the Hitman Hart become one of his new faces of the company, and his theme song, although it sounds like a Bon Jovi song at times, that squelch from the guitar, that wee, that long bend, that is such a great Pavlov's bell that you just know, like, oh, it's Bret Hart. And then once he retired and everything, his niece Natalia Neidhart, she's now the she's the matriarch of the Hart dynasty
Oh,
now.
really?
So her theme music is an updated version of Bret's original music, but still has that long squelch at the beginning, so that oh, that's the Harts.
Yeah.
And like Bret wasn't much on the microphone, but man, he looked so cool coming out with those glasses on, that black leather jacket. Like, he looked like he was born to rock.
Oh, yeah.
And like, he opens his mouth and it's kind of dry and slow, but he was able to connect to so many kids by giving away his sunglasses.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, every kid that was front row wanted to be the one that Bret gave their glasses to. Like, I mean, come on, that's like the coolest. But like, it had that like pace and everything that just was like a good like walkout song without being too over the top and crazy. And then like, I want to say like midway through like his like career, like that song evolved itself and like became even more rockin' and even more like Bon Jovi-y. And like I say it's Bon Jovi-y because like the synths in it and that pulsing pattern, it just reminds me so much of Slippery When Wet, like the album production style and everything. And Bon Jovi's kind of like a heartbreak dude, but also not really a heartbreaker.
Yeah.
He was a little bit more positive than like, oh, whatever, girl. It was like, no, girl, you're cool. And like Bret Hart wasn't Shawn Michaels, the heartbreak kid, but he's got the name Hart in his name. So, it made sense to me. And like, dun, 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 like, it's such an interesting cadence and rhythm, and it just works so well.
Yeah, it's that driving forward is good walkout music in the sense that like it's literally feels like you're walking, like you're on a mission,
Yeah.
And yeah, I never even thought about that Bon Jovi comparison because yeah, it is, even though he didn't record Bon Jovi, like Mutt Lange, very production type of song in the way it sounds. And the guy that created this song created just the rest of your songs on this list is Jim Johnston.
Oh man, what a genius.
Fucking legend. I didn't know. I knew it was the same guy that did all these, but I didn't know like how in depth he went into. He was on a podcast with Stone Cold Steve Austin. And one, I gotta say, Stone Cold's a great interviewer. He's just so interesting and very. He gives his guests time to shine. He asks great questions, and he also is very good at like piecing together and doing his research. But he was talking to him about how he started, and he's, he is not a classically trained musician. He does come kind of from that world, but he also loves John Williams. He loves those types of soundtracks. So when it came to like coming up with like Bret Hart's theme and these others, it was all about kind of putting forward like just you hear this and you see these colors, these pink and black. You know? And I feel like that was very synonymous with that era of like hair metal and
Bon Jovi. Like, I definitely see a lot of Pink when I listen to Bon Jovi, because a lot of his songs are about love, and I mean, Living on a Prayer, You Give Love a Bad Name, like, and that's the song that I hear most with it is You Give Love a Bad Name, but the inverse of like, I love that you've got that you're a bad name. It's like a weird inverse, and that's the Bret Hart theme. And Jim Johnston, he kept stuff modern, but he also like kept everything within the character itself.
yeah.
And like made sure that like it worked. Or like Diesel, his first entrance music was just the sound of a diesel engine starting up and like the horns. But then like he took that sample and actually wrote like a blues stomp to it, and it just kind of worked for what Kevin Nash as Diesel was.
Yeah.
Like he's he's as big as a semi truck, and his
Yeah.
name's Diesel. He, like, yeah, like something with a slow strut for a
Yeah.
big guy. It made perfect sense, but that's not part of this list.
Yeah.
It's not part of this list.
But I just think it's so fun to like really look into each of these, and it's something that's become so synonymous. Every one of these songs is very synonymous with these wrestlers, and to think about the attention to detail that went into every single one. That the reason why it's so synonymous is because there was this extra like these extra things that were put into
A caring soul
Yeah,
that like
yeah.
cared about making sure that they looked good. And like what Jim Johnston did was he was like that, like cherry on top with
Oh,
like,
yeah.
now your character makes sense. You've got you've got your costume, you've got your personality. What about your walkout music? Like, what's your theme song?
Yeah.
If you were a TV show, what's your theme song? And if you're coming out into the arena as a surprise and you want the crowd to just react, like Jim Johnston tried to throw Pavlov's bell at like the beginning of every song he did.
You would think it would become like the entire theme, but no, it's like that being like the having that for each wrestler was not only like important, but it never got old.
No, it doesn't get old.
Yeah.
And like I wish it would come back more often, because now like the new Pavlov's bell, because Jim Johnston's not part of the songwriting team for WWE, it's just like the wrestler's catchphrase and then like this generic AI sounding music that doesn't say anything or move me to think like, oh, this guy's cool or this gal's awesome. Like when Jim Johnston was still writing music and working with like bands like Downstate, like for for like a more modern sound, because people, modern wrestlers want, modern music.
Yeah.
I get it. But like, what he, with his work with like Randy Orton's voices, just that I have voices, like we know it's Randy Orton coming out. That's a great Pavlov's bell. It's not a catchphrase.
Yeah.
It's not a sound effect. It's great though. Like it works. But now it's so lost, I feel.
Yeah.
And I'm about to bring up one of the most important Pavlov's bells that's just sent chills down everyone's spine as a kid, especially when he first appeared.
Yeah.
That's the Undertaker.
Literal bell, if you will.
Yeah, like that gong hit,
Yeah.
that boom, and then the lights going dark. Oh my god! Like I just got goosebumps thinking about it. Like being there in the arena when it happens, especially when you're not expecting the Undertaker to come out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my god! There's nothing more cool. Like it is just a fun experience of like, there's the gong and the lights went out. Someone's about to die. Like, and then like I think the song is called Graveyard Symphony, but he takes like a funeral. Jim Johnston took a funeral dirge and then added this beautiful somber, but like the way that melody resolves is still like uplifting, and then it goes into that classic dun
Yeah.
dun 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 dun, like it just makes death feel so empowering versus like something to be afraid of. And that is if you're on the Undertaker's side. If you fear the Undertaker, you hear that funeral chime and you're like, oh shit, I'm gonna die.
I found an interview and he was talking about with that song specifically, Undertaker's theme. He said he wanted to sound like a funeral with the church bells and the organ. He wanted music to go deeper in just a shallow nature of pure aggression that sits at the core of a lot of wrestling music. And I mean, mission accomplished. Like that. You're right. Like that little. I guess you can call it like a bridge where it just breaks off into this. It's like sad sounding, and it's very like you're both intimidated, but also like it takes you to being in like the view of death.
I don't know if you've heard the original demo of that track.
I don't think so.
Oh, it's it's a lone piano, and it's so haunting that you kind of wish that Undertaker left, like when he like officially hung his boots up and everything, that he would have gone out to the like single lone piano demo version of
Uh-huh.
it, because it was like the resolve in the composition, like it takes something so dark but like shows you like the butterfly, but then kind of zooms in and shows you the skull on the
Yeah.
butterfly, like it it it, it morphs so beautifully. And like there's only one other wrestler that has that type of like morphing type of composition, and that's Mankind. When his original entrance was dark and drastic, but
Yeah.
then his exit music was a completely different, uplifting, like hopeful song, and that was, his insanity to be,
Yeah.
it played along with that. But the Undertaker's was like he it never allowed Undertaker to be a bad guy forever.
Yeah.
Like with the way that the music played, because if it was just dun 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 dun, dun like on repeat, it would have been just one. All right, whatever. We're annoyed by this,
Yeah.
and we probably would have gotten tired of Undertaker. He probably would have gotten
Yeah.
tired of, oh, I'm the dead man. Okay, like the fact that like that one little bit within before it goes back to the hook, like it does so much for the listener and for the live audience, that like, oh,
Yeah.
something magical is happening with this guy. And it's, and that's like one of the few songs that's like a calm before the storm. Like, someone's about to die because they're facing the Undertaker at WrestleMania. And the only other song that I can think of that's like a true calm before the storm is also another villain of that era. That was Yokozuna. And Yokozuna's music, I mean, first off, like, I thought Yokozuna was Japanese.
He's Samoan, right?
Yeah, he was a Samoan representing Japan. I never understood why they would always say representing Japan, but they were covering their asses early on the appropriation thing. And
I mean, compared to what the '80s was, this was like a step in the right direction.
yeah. I mean, he's still Asian.
Yeah.
They're both in the same ocean, at least. But Yokozuna was so fucking massive, like in size, just his girth. Like as soon as he sits on someone, they're done. Like I remember in fourth grade, like kids talking about Yokozuna. I'm like, what's that? Like I wasn't watching wrestling at the time, and like kid lets me borrow a VHS tape. I'm like, that's Yokozuna? Oh my God. And of course, like fourth graders, we're not going to stop talking about, like, man, imagine if he sat on your toilet, he'd break it. And like, apparently he did. And that's like terrible.
Yeah.
But like, as a fourth grader, can't help but like have those thoughts.
Yeah.
And those conversations at the lunch table. But the one thing about Yokozuna that like always like struck me was like how like relaxed and zen like his music was. But then once like he came out, everyone just started booing because they're like, "Oh God, this guy's gonna destroy our guy." Fuck, and it was like being in the eye of a hurricane when he'd walk out, because as soon as the bell would ring, it was just destruction. He was undefeated for a while, and then I think Lex Luger finally slammed him.
Oh, was he the first?
Allegedly.
It was just haunting. I think that the theme definitely, because he is an intimidating force to begin with, but yeah, his theme definitely, it feels kind of in similar to the way the Undertaker's theme felt, but in a very different way.
Yeah, like someone's gonna get hurt
Yeah.
facing this guy, and it seems calm for now, but just wait.
Yeah. He had this like very like Ivan Drago kind of presence, and
Yeah,
this is very stoic and
Yeah, and like other people of that era was like, oh, he's so fat, like how can he even move around the ring? And then like you'd see him run the ropes, and you're like, oh God, like
Yeah.
he's going to destroy that ring and that guy in it.
Yeah.
Like he is a hurricane. Like, oh my God. And he was stoic and just he didn't say much. You know, Mr. Fuji was always his mouthpiece, or Jim Cornette. You know, he always had someone else speak for him, and like that just added so much more to the intimidation
Oh
factor
yeah.
of just like this brooding presence. And the song was neither like evil nor good. It was very neutral.
Yeah.
And like he was always booked as like a bad guy, but he could have just have easily been a good guy with that same song.
Yeah, I think that because I mean he unfortunately passed away pretty young, and I think that I could see him kind of transitioning. I mean, I know they're related, but like when Rikishi came out, he kind of came out very similar to start off with, and he kind of evolved into this like fun like party
Yeah.
guy. I could see them maybe trying to do that because apparently like the guy like Yokozuna, his name's Ronnie.
Rodney.
Yeah, Rodney. He could like he could ball, like he was into like the culture, you know, and I could see them maybe trying something like that with him. But he played the part so well. I
Yeah.
mean, it was one of those things where it's just we like we talked about borders on stereotypes, but at the same time, it was so fun to like root against him and also fun to see what he was gonna do next.
And when he would create the upsets, you know, of like he pins the guy that you totally expected was going to win because
Yeah.
there's all this hype about it, but he pins him 1, 2, 3, and then woo, like this like chill, like oh, death just happened, you know. And it was, man, rest in peace, Yokozuna.
Yeah.
Like he was one of a kind, and man, that music still to this day one of the best.
It's I feel like it's when you put this on the list, I had to think about it for a second, but it's just so it's probably not one of the ones people think of right away when it comes to wrestling theme songs. But yeah,
But as soon as I hear those flutes going into like a fucking Chinese restaurant type of thing, I'm like, is Yokozuna around? Is this Yokozuna? Would he listen to this or would he walk out to this?
and that just goes into like the attention to detail. I mean, everything is just so it doesn't feel like you could put that in like a kung fu movie or something, and it doesn't feel out of place. It doesn't feel like a parody. It doesn't feel
Yeah.
like
I mean, Jim Johnston was using all the appropriate scales and instrumentation and everything. Like he wrote everything like scientifically correct.
Yeah.
You know? And then on top of that, it just made sense for the character. And that is such a big deal for something to like come through and like just make sense for like what you're about to see. We did Hulk Hogan. We got to see the American Pride.
Mm.
We went into Bret Hart, who was like, got the dynasty. And then we did Undertaker, who's just, I mean, if you don't know the Undertaker theme song, like, please pay attention to pop culture. And then Yokozuna. But number 5, and I think everyone was waiting for this one.
Should I break a glass right now? Break a bottle?
I mean, you broke one earlier.
Yeah, I did actually.
But absolutely, the sound of glass breaking means only one thing, and that is Stone Cold Steve Austin is going to stomp a fucking mud hole in you and walk you dry. God, what a Pavlov's bell!
Yeah.
Like that. As soon as anyone hears glass break, they just want to go dun 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 dun. Like everyone's like inner Beavis and Butthead comes out. Dun, 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 like doesn't matter if you're at a bar or at a restaurant. You hear the glass break. You want Stone Cold to come out and just start whooping ass.
Yeah.
Like 1000%.
Yeah, Jim Johnston's talking about how the thing that resonated with his character as he's like coming up with this song is that like Stone Cold is literally the name. Like he is this kind of fascination that people have. Like you can't tell your boss fuck you. You can't tell your boss like you're about to open up a can of whoop ass. And he like people embodied that in seeing him. So hearing that glass break, like you said, you're about to open a can of whoop ass. Like you're ready for him to kind of just come out and like tell his boss fuck you.
It's like the most over the top version of taking a beer bottle, smashing against the bar, and saying, "You want to fucking go, motherfucker?" Like. but in song, and for one guy, and it only works for one guy.
Yeah.
I don't know any other wrestler that could have come out to that music and it makes sense. Like, I could think about it for days. Like, closest I could think of is maybe Bruiser Brody, but he passed away in the 80s, or early 90s. He passed away long before Stone Cold was a thing. And it still wouldn't work for him. There's just something about Stone Cold's presence being bald, the goatee, and like the earring and the gold chain, and then the vest with the skulls,
Yeah.
and then just no care, flipping everyone off, like doesn't care about getting fined by the FCC, like doesn't care about the cussing, like, and it just so many people wanted to be Stone Cold. Like, he was supposed to be the bad guy.
Yeah.
He was supposed to be the bad guy, but he was so badass, undeniably badass, that you just had to fucking root for him.
Yeah.
Like, even when, because like one of my favorite wrestlers was always Bret Hart. So when it was WrestleMania 13, Bret Hart versus Stone Cold Steve Austin, and he's like just bloodied up and passes out in the sharpshooter from blood. That was like, if you're a Bret Hart fan, Stone Cold's pretty badass, right,
Yeah.
guys? Like, Bret Hart's our favorite. Stone Cold's pretty badass, right, guys? Right? Yeah, we're all in the, right? Yeah, Stone Cold. Yeah. Like, everyone was on Team Stone Cold. Like, did not matter. And as soon as you hear glass break, everyone just gets hyped. And like when the glass broke at WrestleMania 30 at Jerry World, oh my God. Like that whole arena, bunch of rowdy Texans getting to see the rowdiest Texan and hearing his glass break. I mean, that's just one of the coolest experiences.
Yeah, it's something I remember going to a few. I don't think we ever went to see, like, I don't think Stone Cold was ever at the ones that we saw, but yeah, that was definitely like one of the things I was hoping for.
Yeah, like if the glass breaks, you're gonna get excited, and I think that's why I think Stone Cold's glass is the ultimate Pavlov's bell, because it's not a catchphrase. Like we did this pre-rock. If you smell, pre-catchphrase. It works so well, and you only think of one person and one attitude and one hardcore ass kicking that's coming.
Yeah. Yeah, I think looking back, especially, I mean, he's somebody who is just, he's kind of stayed relevant in terms of like pop culture. I mean, his Hot Ones is a great episode, and he just seems like a great guy. He's got a lot of views that I wouldn't expect from him, which is very.
I love that he's become a cat dad.
Oh yeah, with this snake cats.
With Poncho and Lefty. Yeah, like he has evolved on the outside of the ring, probably in one of my most favorite fashions out of like all the other wrestlers. I'm like, I'm really, really happy that Stone Cold turned out the way he did, instead of like being trash. Like, he could have just been like, oh, I've got money and I'm gonna treat waiters with disrespect. Like, he could have been rich trash, but instead he's enriched and like seems to be mentally healthy and like has his chores, does his thing, and man, so proud of him.
He kind of feels like the embodiment of like positive masculinity, in the sense that like no one's gonna like say anything that he's doing is like not masculine, but at the same time he doesn't give a shit either way. And
the fact that he loves animals is like, I mean, you gotta love animals. Like, that's like a basic litmus test, but like he's like proudly loves like all of his wildlife and animals and cats and things, and just seeing how he's become so human and beyond being this ass-kicking badass ass kicker. I love and he's still that badass ass-kicking ass kicker. But it's wonderful seeing him cat dad, host, friend. Like, would you want to be friends with Stone
Oh
Cold?
yeah, definitely.
I would.
He's got, and it, like from a progressive view standpoint too. Like I remember around when the Equal Rights Amendment came out, about not equal rights amendment, but the marriage law.
Yeah.
So gay couples could get married. He was on a podcast or a radio show, and I think they were kind of expecting him to be against it, but it was the total opposite. But he also did it. He talked about it in like the very Stone Cold fashion. It's like, it really chaps my ass that people say they talk to God, and God told him that gay people can't get married. When the hell are you talking to God? It just felt like a promo. Like,
I mean, was he wrong though?
no.
Because Stone Cold Steve Austin is a true badass ass kicker.
That's the bottom line.
And that's the bottom line. And the fact that like he came up with all of his stuff like on the fly, just in his head.
Yeah.
And it became like ultimate catchphrase. Like I remember a kid came to school wearing an Austin 316 shirt, and I was like, what's that? I mean, the back of the shirt is badass. Stone Cold, like, is this like a song?
Flames out of the eyes.
Yeah,
of the
is
skull.
this like a song or something? And he's like, no, this is Stone Cold Steve Austin. He's badass. I'm like, okay, I need to like get back into wrestling. Like, okay. But then like I saw that he was feuding with like Bret Hart, and I'm like, but I'm Team Bret. And then WrestleMania 13. All right, Stone Cold's fucking badass.
Yeah. Yeah, I love just what he means to. I feel like him and Hulk Hogan are kind of interesting in that they are kind of the beacons of their era. But I feel like what Stone Cold did was he made heels, like it got to the point. I think that was the first point, at least from my wrestling viewing experience, where heels became cool to root for. You see NWO kind of embody that too, and that's I think what ultimately led to Hulk Hogan going to Hollywood Hogan. And I feel like it, even though it's kind of at the same time, I feel like Stone Cold is really what brought that in.
He was the glass that broke at the bar, that stopped the jukebox, that stopped time for a second because he was packing a fist. Like he did so much for wrestling. And not enough, like, I'm sure a lot of people say, oh, he gets credit plenty of times. But I'm like, no, he doesn't get enough. Like, Stone Cold Steve Austin brought wrestling back into the pure mainstream spotlight the way that Hogan did in the 80s. And, you know, I think that's a great conclusion for my list, because you got the start of, like, the pop culture craze, and then we end with the last of the first of the second pop culture craze.
Yeah, no, I think that was perfect in how it went from that to that, and also you can hear the difference in the sound too, like the sound of the actual songs.
Yeah, and you also see like hear Jim Johnston's growth as a songwriter with those 4 tracks. Like, you know, he took the Bret Hart one is Heart Attack is very much like, all right, here's like a good loop. Here's some solo. Here's some shred.
Yeah.
This is going to work. It works for Bret. But then you go like evolve to like Stone Cold, where it's like just the same thing on repeat, but instead of like solos, it's just like more weird hits. And like it just sounds like someone just like in one of those like smash rooms, just smashing everything. Like I would imagine like that would be the song that should be playing in those smash rooms for the 3 minutes that you got, you know, to like break stuff with a hammer.
Oh, absolutely.
Either that or Limp Bizkit's Break Stuff.
Yeah.
Like those are the only 2 songs that are like most appropriate I could think of.
Yeah, definitely. I think with Jim Johnston too, I mean, this wasn't on your list, but like going into like DX, I'm sure you can probably attest, everyone thought that was Rage Against the Machine.
Everyone thought that was Rage Against the Machine. Everyone thought that was Rage Against the Machine. And then when they learned that it wasn't, there was a lot of people that were let down. I thought it was Rage Against the Machine for a minute, but then like they played it on like a WrestleMania or some pay-per-view, and I was like, that's not Rage Against.
Yeah, the dude looked like Jamiroquai.
Yeah, and like I was just like, that's not Rage Against the Machine. I mean, the song's still good.
Oh, yeah.
But like, yeah, you can hear the influence in the licks and everything. Like, I feel like it's up there with like Weird Al's stylistic parody,
Yeah.
but even Weird Al's stylistic parody wasn't really in to make fun of it. It was more like respecting like what this artist did to change how we listen to music and like what we put into our music.
Yeah, definitely. I think that that's just like another testament to Jim Johnston as a music writer, and nothing feels like a parody. Nothing feels like a caricature. There's like this like, I don't know if it's late. I think it was early '90s. I can't remember the country singer, but he did like a metal. He did like covers of metal, and he did Enter Sandman, and it sounded like an old guy like trying to like connect with you. It felt like
Yeah.
How Do You Do, Fellow Kids. Jim Johnston never even broached that because everything he did was relevant. It was stylistically influenced by whatever style influenced, but it wasn't ever like a cheap parody.
Like he was a music tailor versus like a songwriter. Like, hey, write me this song. Let me ask you some questions.
Yeah.
You know, like let's get in here of like what's this all about? You know, like what colors are you wearing a lot? Green? Okay. Money, huh? All right, how about this song? Money, 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 money.
It feels almost like going to like a PR person, you know? I mean, it is essentially.
Yeah. And there was so much demand for the music of WWE that they released multiple volumes of just the entrance themes. Just the entrance themes. And like some of them, like Goldust's original theme music, I used that and Hakushi's music for several school project videos. Oh yeah, if I needed anything cinematic, like those two tracks, oh, that's gonna set the mood.
My favorite thing to come out, I'm pretty sure it's a Jim Johnston theme, but the Big Show's, this is the Big Show.
Where's the Big Show?
My favorite thing to come out of that is someone tweeted that they just imagined Paul White in the like studio singing a song. And I don't know if that's true, and like I could very well imagine him being the one who actually sang it.
but I mean, it's got that. I mean, that's a Pavlov's bell, but again, it's not necessarily a catchphrase either.
It's
just
his
introduction of the guy. But I mean, still, like, it doesn't beat Glass Shattering. Like Glass Shattering, you know, a fight's about to break down, or someone's in trouble.
They're selling like an image. They're selling like that. Like that's like it's where all these other ones were very much like, yeah, let's do this. Like that one is very like Stone Cold is very like, no, get the fuck out of my way. Like you're gonna die.
Like it definitely sells the idea. Like it fuels the imagination of the listener. You know, like you hear that song, if you've never heard it before, you want to break stuff. Like, or just like kick the crap out of something. Like it's so like wonderfully violent while also bringing so much joy to people.
Wonderfully violent is like the best way to put it. I think that whole genre of like, that's a great genre. That's a playlist right there.
Wonderfully violent.
Wonderfully violent. What are some other ones that you wanted to include, you know, in terms?
Shawn Michaels' theme song, I'm Just a Sexy Boy. That one, of course, is like an instant Pavlov's bell with, oh, Shawn. You know, but he also sang the second version of that song.
Did he really?
Yeah, that's actually him. You think I'm cute? I know I'm sexy. Like they must have used a lot of processing filters on that. Auto-tune before it was auto-tune.
I think with him, I mean, he's one of my favorites, and I think a lot of it too is like being from San Antonio.
And he also has like charisma the size of Texas. Like him and Stone Cold both have personalities and charisma the size of Texas. And like they're both polar opposites of like wrestlers and like personalities, you know. And you know, Shawn Michaels had a great one. I always loved Mr. Perfect's music just because it was like regal sounding without being like an actual classical composition like
Yeah.
Macho Man's, Pomp and Circumstance. But Mr. Perfect's was like just as majestic and pompous.
Yeah.
Pompous circumstances.
I think that feel now that you mention it, I feel like that kind of feels like a precursor to Kurt Angle's. Like
Yeah.
they're not similar in that sense, but they do feel kind of.
Well, Kurt Angle's music was originally Del Wilkes, the Patriots' music.
Oh.
Yeah. So the like during like 97 or 98, Del Wilkes, he was the Patriot, he was like masked Patriot dude. He came out to the theme music that we all know as Kurt Angle's "You Suck, You Suck, You Suck," and like it also works for the Patriot. Sorry, Del, but
I love in hindsight now, like I appreciate how good Kurt Angle was at playing that part. He's like literally like Olympic champion and he's out there like
he had. There's no doubt in my mind that out of everyone in WWE, he had the most fun.
yeah. Oh yeah.
Like he got to be so goofy and like show the world like just how silly he can be, and showed that like professional athletes can party
Yeah.
and hang out and make you laugh. Like him with the fucking
The cowboy hat's the first thing I
singing
think.
Jimmy Crack Corn. Oh my god. Like brilliant man.
Yeah.
And like on top of that, he's one of the greatest wrestlers to have ever walked the earth.
Yeah.
But yeah, like his original music wasn't originally his. And Goldberg's music from WCW, that wasn't originally his music either.
Oh really?
Pat Tanaka, who's like another legendary wrestler, when he did an event for WCW, that was his music like 2 years before Goldberg. Yeah, WCW had a lot of the Ted Turner library for music, so like there's literally like stuff that I would hear on the Space Ghost Coast to Coast CDs. And I'm like, wait a minute, I've heard this riff before. And then like you turn on, same studio, Turner, and it's the Diamond Dallas Page, Nirvana sound alike. I wouldn't say it's a cover or a parody. It sounds, it's meant to sound exactly like it without being it. Yeah, and there was a lot of that like on Ted Turner's programming. Like you'll hear stuff that was like in a TV show or part of like in a scene of a TV show, but it's also some wrestlers like music.
Yeah.
Like it was kind of weird for me to like I didn't really get much of a Pavlov's Bell effect from WCW.
Yeah.
But WWE with Jim Johnston, nothing but that man knew the assignment. He understood it. He wrote the book.
So I gotta ask you, this is one of my favorite like icebreaker questions in general, but if you were a wrestler, what would be your song if you had to pick like an actual like pop song or anything?
Man, that's a great question.
Because I like to ask this in different scenarios because there's if you're a wrestler and then there's if you're like a UFC fighter because those are very two different vibes, depending on the character that you're going for if as a wrestler or as a boxer even.
As corny as it sounds, if I was a wrestler, I would love to come out to the Baywatch theme song.
Oh yeah.
I'll be ready. Like that song gets me hype. That'd be a good.
That is a good one.
And that's the singer of Survivor.
Oh really?
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's the singer of Survivor singing that one. And like Survivor and like Stan Bush, like it's like this genre of like super positive rock. Like it's like not. It's like positive enough to be like allowed in Christian stores, but it's not Christian. Like you got the touch, never surrender. I have the tiger. You're like everyone's just like positive, like yeah, we're gonna win this. And like Jim Johnston definitely like captured a lot of those moments in there. But for me, wrestling theme song, I'm always here.
Yeah. I think I didn't even think about that. I feel like when I ask this, people like to think of like, oh, like let's do Pantera, like,
Yeah, everyone goes for something aggressive, but like me personally, like I love to help. I love being available and ready to help people. Like Baywatch was like crack for me. It's just nothing but people helping, and like, yeah, I'm there, man, and uh, yeah, like it's a positive song. I'm a pretty positive dude, and it's it's just one of those songs that like brings smiles to people's faces, even if they never heard, even if they never watched an episode of Baywatch and didn't know that. As soon as that piano solo hits, it's like, oh, this is good. Yeah. Either that or like, ooh, probably is. It's a song from a video game. But if I were to do something dark, like have a dark song, uh, Coconuts. I think that's the name of the song. It's from Hotline Miami. Have you ever played that video
No.
game? Oh, great soundtrack for like a lot of synth wave. But like this song's like just starts with like this doomy low frequency note, and it's just like unsettling and slow. There's not much of a beat to it, and it's menacing without like while while questioning. You know, it raises questions instead of just like, oh, I'm scared. It's like, what's he gonna do? Like, is this guy on our side? Like, it's got a lot of dissonant notes in it, but they're like low frequency dissonant notes, so it's like gut uncomfortable twitches. And like, if I were to be a bad guy, I'd go for something like that, you know. But if I was gonna be a baby face, 100% the Baywatch thing.
Yeah.
Like, not even a lifeguard gimmick, just like, yeah, let's go.
It's very like, I see like a Marty Jannetty type like coming out with like a mullet.
Oh, I'd be a grade just below. I'd be like on the Barry Horowitz level. Like, put me in the opening match, pin me, pay me.
Your stepping stone.
Yeah, dude. Like, whoever wrestles first is the smartest people in the show. Like, why would you want to wait around until like the end of the night to wrestle? Just get like, we're all getting paid. Cool. Like, how long do you need me out there for? 5 minutes? That's it? You want me to cut it down to 3 and pay me the same? Like, I would love to be a low card wrestler. That's like being a backup goalie.
Oh yeah.
You know, like, are you trying to like move up in the ranks? Fuck no, man. I'm having fun getting to hang out with my friends. You know, like a lot of people like never appreciate that low card spot, and like, I've always enjoyed being on low cards. Also been part of headlining squads, but being on the low card, there's just something like gritty about it that like keeps it fun and interesting.
Yeah.
So if I was a wrestler, I wouldn't want to be a champion. I'd rather just be like, oh, that guy loses all the time. Yeah, it's pretty awesome. Let's see how he's gonna lose today. And then when you finally get that one win, it's like, wait, what?
Yeah, that's awesome.
What about you? What would be your theme song?
I don't know. I don't even know what type of character I'd want. I kind of gravitate towards like, I feel like New Noise by Refuse is always like a cool answer.
There's so many people on the indies that use that one.
Yeah, I figured. Yeah, my favorite situation that ever occurred was there was a UFC fighter. I can't remember who it was. He asked to come out to the Halo theme, and they played Halo by Beyonce.
Oh my god!
And he's walking, and the camera's on him. He's like, "This isn't the right song." And then like after like 30 seconds, he's like, "Fuck it." He just starts like walking to it. But there's a Miracle Crow Cop who is, I don't know if you're familiar with him. He's like this. He was a Ukrainian cop or Croatian cop, and he did like MMA. And he would say his right leg hospital, left leg grave. Or maybe backwards. He's like the scariest looking dude. He came out to Duran Duran all the time. He came out to Girls on Film or Rio, I think. And yeah, it was one of those things. I don't know if he just loved Duran Duran or he's just like, look, you're gonna hear this song and you're gonna get mixed emotions, and I'm gonna destroy you.
Also, this one would be like a really morbid one. Like if I was like 6'6", huge, intimidating stature. Mercedes Sosa's Gracias a la Vida would be like the Death Note song. Like it's of the same pace of like Bang Bang, He Shot Me Down, like slow, stripped down, just vocals and a lone classical guitar. And like gracias a la vida is just like thank you for the life you've given. It'd be like reading someone their obituary
Yeah.
on the way to the ring, and I think that would be just fucking powerful.
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be rad. I love that. It's so fun. It's one of those things too where like I feel like on any given day my answer is gonna change and
Yeah.
yeah.
And it's so wild that like, you know, because we aren't characters on
Yeah.
TV, we don't have to Bart Simpson our lives and wear
Yeah.
the same clothes every time we're on film. If we were, we'd have to have like a permanent theme, and I'd rather have someone like Jim Johnston tailor me one.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Than just pick one out of a songbook. Like
Yeah.
I'd rather have someone that's like actually like, all right, so you're into this? All right, now tell me something about when you were 5. What do you remember? You know, like I imagine like those are like the interview questions, and he comes up with just something that's just like that works.
Yeah.
Why does this work so well? Because you said you like the color green, and I was just thinking this note, this G note here, and into this arpeggio, just it's a lot of green. I like it.
That's such a cool job to have. Like it's
Oh.
just such a cool like to be a part of it. And it feels like such a minor part, but it's like probably one of the most important parts other than the skill level of being a wrestler.
Yeah, I mean, I've composed some music before, and then just cut my vocals out, and then I'm like, all right, wrestlers, pick your theme. Because when I used to produce wrestling, like I tried everything I could to just no one use copyrighted music so we can like broadcast this shit. But everyone, you know, nobody listens. Nobody listens. And so eventually I just gave up, and everyone was like, all right, we could pick from Spotify. I want to use this. I'm like, does everyone have to use El Chapo? Like, you're not that badass.
Yeah. Well, hey man, thanks so much.
Thank
coming
you
on
for
again.
having me back again, man.
Yeah.
Like, did you have a good Thanksgiving?
Yeah, yeah, something like that.
All right.
This is totally not 10 minutes after we did the last one.
Not at all.
Not at all. What are you talking about?
Not
Why
at
did I
all.
say that?
Got on different clothes. It's been 2 weeks.
My beard has stayed the exact same length. It just does that.
I just do a 5 o'clock shadow constantly.
Now, I really appreciate you coming on. Man.
Oh, anytime, man. Like, I could do this pretty regularly.
Yeah.
Like, I've listened to all kinds of shit, and I've made all kinds of dumb mixes for no reason. I mean, I think we could do something like TV theme songs of the eras.
Yeah.
You know, more than just like a mixtape for a friend, just mixtapes for what's happened in our pop culture lives.
Mixtapes for moods. Like,
yeah.
I like the idea of like mixtapes that you hear going grocery shopping after your like fridge is empty. Like there's certain vibes.
There's certain songs that are always on at the grocery store whenever I go. Lately, I've been hearing a lot of The Fix, which makes me happy, but it also is a sign that I'm getting old.
Yeah.
But thanks again for having me, man.
Yeah,
I appreciate
of
it
course.
very much.
I appreciate you too, man. Thank you for listening to Mixtape Stories.